SEC football. It just means more. Now back to your favorite bearded duo, Todd and Marty.
Welcome back, guys, to the pretty much the season finale of the Under Review podcast this year. And of course, you know, there will be an off season, but this is the last show, episode 46. I'm going to be your host. And to left, right, whatever, we got Cody rocking with us today. So let's jump into things. So we got a little bit to cover. We're going to do the post-national championship. And then we're going to jump into some SEC report cards. What was... Fricker fracker. I remember I moved it when I was...
Don't mess this up.
It wouldn't be the first time.
This episode of the Under Review podcast is brought to you by Chuck's Heating and Air. Chuck has over 40 years of service and experience with residential services. He services most makes and models. He is Alabama licensed, bonded, and insured, and locally owned and operated. Are you hot and you're supposed to be cool? Are you cool and you're supposed to be hot? Then you've got a problem. Call Chuck. Area code 256-892-2757. Again, 256-892-2757. Chuck's Heating and Air.
Again, thank you to Chuck's Heating and Air for everything he does for us throughout the year. So, Cody, let's talk about it. The national championship was a pretty good ball game. I was okay with it. I mean, it did get out of hand a little bit, but I thought Notre Dame fought back to where it was okay to watch. It wasn't a blowout like we had earlier in the year from some of the other playoff games, but I was content with the committee on this one.
So I agree. I think the committee did get it right, you know, and I actually kind of like seeing some of those underdog teams win and get into the national championship. It made it a little bit more interesting, you know. I think a lot of people had the brackets wrong, which is pretty insane. Most of the time, most people get complacent and get accurate, but, you know, this time it was a little shocking to us. But one thing I will say, if you did not watch the national championship game after halftime because you thought it was fixing to be a blowout, you missed a good game.
Yeah. I mean, really battling right there at the end, and I thought they had a chance, but like you and I talked earlier, I think it was a little too late. But the crazy part is, you said these lesser teams. You got to think, Ohio State lost to Michigan. They didn't win their conference, and you know, and still to come back and be a lower seed in the playoff to win the whole national championship. So not to say that Ohio State was a little guy, but, you know, it's in this format, you know, smaller teams could come out as national championships.
And it's something that you're going to end up covering later in the off season. It brings into the NIL. The NIL has a whole lot of play of taking those big key players from a lot of these schools that you would have normally seen, like your Alabamas and Texas, or, you know, like even some from Ohio State. I mean, these big tier schools, the NIL is being spread, and so it's going to actually open up a lot of these conferences really to compete in the next few years.
I think with the NIL, it's more or less a Pandora's box of craziness going on. Yes, once we get into the episodes, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be a lot of information. But it's crazy to think that Alabama, as far as people leaving, just what I know already is Alabama had the 16th ranked class in the portal for people leaving. As far as like the Titanic's going down, so we're all going to leave. Yes, they did have one or two guys step back in there, but as last time I looked, Alabama was at the bottom of the barrel of SEC teams, but they have brought a lot in, like I said, and I think they were either South Carolina or Mississippi State. It was one of them that Todd and I talked about, and they lost 25 players, but yeah, I think they got like 24, 23 different ones back. So it's a wash to a certain extent, but no, let's jump into the game.
So right now you're looking at it. The score ended up being 34-23, and really and truly, this score should have been over at the beginning of halftime. I mean, it was 28-7 going into the half. You know, Marcus Freeman was asked, what do you do? And he said, we played zone when we needed to play man, and we played man when we needed to play zone. Did he make those adjustments at halftime? I believe he did. I believe he did. But again, like you've mentioned earlier, and that we talked about before the show, I think that score was just a little too far out there for Notre Dame to come back.
Yeah, and not to say that they didn't lay it out on the line the last couple of drives. And then we talked about in the pre-show, Ohio State had some miscues. They got into a little bit of penalty trouble there in the last 5 minutes with a few calls that really led to Notre Dame's having the momentum, and then especially the interception late where it was looking like Angels in the outfield that they did have a shot at coming back and being able. But it's great thing. As we've talked about Mitch Jeter, their kicker, I really thought it was upsetting to see him miss that field goal, and I think that would have rolled more momentum in. To possibly keep this coming back, because it would have been 16 points, then they'd cut it down, then they scored the touchdown, which got it in range, and then Ohio State got the ball back, and it was absolutely nuts. As far as numbers wise, Ohio State had 445 total offensive yards to Notre Dame's 308, which was, again, we've seen, if you watched any of the game, was a Will Howard show. Passing efficiency, 231 yards, 17 for 21, almost 10, 11 yards a pass for Howard, which he was phenomenal. Definitely the MVP as far as the national championship game. On the other hand, Riley Leonard didn't do terrible. 22 for 32, 255 in the air, total of 308, which only left their running game with Jeremiah Love with only 53 total yards and 26 attempts, which is, you needed to get that game, because if you were going to keep Riley Leonard, like we talked about, get your players involved. Riley Leonard did his. I'm not going to say that they didn't, but I thought Ohio State's defense kept them more in check. Like in our keys to the game, the defense made the plays. Defense wins championships, and that's essentially at the end, that's what happened.
Well, I think a lot of Riley Leonard, this is the first time he's been on a stage like that. And kind of sort of for Will Howard, but, I get it. Early, there was nerves. He had to get through those nerves. But I think in an opinion here, once they got out of the half, even though they talked those adjustments and we talked about making the adjustments, but once they got out of the half, you saw a different Riley Leonard than what you saw in the first half.
Most definitely.
And I think that's when you really saw that team start playing like the earlier Notre Dame we'd seen early in the playoffs. And again, I'm not trying to say that Ohio State didn't play a phenomenal game, because they did.
Oh, yeah, they did.
But in my opinion, both teams played their hearts out and laid it all out on the line. And this, to me, is a diehard Alabama fan. Everybody knows this. But as to me, watching an Alabama national championship and being happy that your team won, this to me is one of the better national championships we've had in probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, most definitely. Either from the TCU Georgia,
yes.
that was maybe watch the first half, but no, it was a good game. And yeah, you can sit here and nitpick and say, well, if Alabama would have been in, they would have won, or if Texas would have beat Ohio State, you can do that. But I think here at the end of the day, they got it right. Defensively, Ohio State did what they had to do and did it often. The biggest play I thought was really when Notre Dame had the momentum under maybe 3 minute drive that they were running, and the big pass to
Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, and I've said his name 500 times since this playoff has started. But that big play there, I thought that was kind of the nail in the coffin. It really set Ohio State up. Then the kicker come in, pretty much put the nail in the coffin, slammed the door, put the key under the mat, and that was it. So, it set 1 or 2 plays, but that play done it, and I hate it for the Notre Dame fans, because I guess so much momentum. Then you come off that high, you lose the national championship. But I think it's going to be more fuel for Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame next year to be a top tier team.
So, and playing off of that, that big play right there set them up. First 2 downs. That play was, I think, a 3rd and 12.
It was a good one.
It was, set back deep. First 2 downs, you've had a Will Howard run with the fullback coming out lead blocking, and you keep the fullback in, and Marcus Freeman made a decision to, and the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame made the decision to stay with keeping that 7 in the box. I think keeping that 7 in the box, like we talked about earlier, was a problem because it left you 1-on-1 with Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, and that's a mismatch on 90%, 95% of the receivers in college football.
And he played that. He played that route right. You saw him stick it. He looked like he was going to the inside, sticks it back outside, and he's wide open down the sideline.
Yeah.
He was 4 or 5 steps ahead of the guy.
Yeah. And to the other fact, Will Howard put that ball in a bucket. He really did. If you watch the play, his hands are open and he drops it in there.
Pretty much probably the play of the game, honestly.
For yes, to seal the deal, like I said, shut the door, coffin, zip the bag up. I think it was lock the door, lights off. Ohio State wins.
To spin off of what you said about Notre Dame, having a little fire in them, I think this is actually going to be a good thing for Marcus Freeman in recruiting in the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to be a spark of, maybe next year, do you see a few more transfer in the spring? Do you see a few more transfer portal hits that maybe go to Notre Dame because of what they're doing out there?
I would most definitely think so. It's good for recruiting when you can get to the national championship. Sell to your kids, say, you are that one piece that we need for the national championship. We were almost there, this, that, and other. So I do see a lot of play into that. So definitely already excited for next year. And I know we got a long couple months until A-Days and fan days and all that kick off. And again, if you're watching, there is the national championship, their logo, Ryan Day. So we see Ryan Day on the screen. So now where does that set? Would you, if you're looking at this, would you rather lose to your rival, 3 years in a row, or win a national championship in 3 years? Because that's what's happened here. He's got throttled by Michigan the last 3 years, but they get the last laugh with a national championship. So,
here's the thing. I say it every single time we get into rival stuff on this podcast, and I will continue to say it till the day that I die. You are going to get the best game in rivalry week.
You say that 5 times.
Yeah, I know, right?
I only fumbled it 700 times.
But you're going to get the best game possible in that. And I know that he has lost to Michigan, and that is a horrible stat to have as a head coach.
For that state, for the rivalry, most definitely.
In including this though, you look at it, that's the biggest. I guarantee you, if Kalen DeBoer had a loss to Auburn in his first season, Alabama fans would have been calling for him to be fired immediately. They're still calling for it, but not even worse. But Ryan Day wins a national title. I've said it on the show before. I do not like Ryan Day.
So either does Hayden. I'm not real fond of him.
But at the end of the day, if Ohio State gets rid of this man, because he cannot beat Michigan, but he brings home national titles, that's a problem.
Yeah, like I said, and I guess I was talking to myself in my head, and I thought, I'd rather lose to Alabama 3 times in a row than win a natty or something like that. Yes, I hate losing, but I know, hey, maybe next 2 years we can get a national a title. But as far as at the end of the game, the outstanding players, MVPs really had to be. There was no hands down. It was Will Howard, 17 for 21, 231 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't know what his rushing stats were, but he had a lot because they run that
57 yards.
57 yards. They run that quarterback draw more than once, putting balls where they needed to be. He did get his players ball Jeremiah Smith, Junkins, I think, had a touchdown at the backfields, which does lead to our other outstanding player, MVP. However, I can never say his first name.
Quinshawn Judkins.
Judkins, 11 carries, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I think I'm pretty sure one was in the air, but no, just 2 really big pieces of this national championship team. And yes, there are so many defense players. Jack Sawyer, Caleb Downs. There's another defensive back that flew all over the ball.
Sonny Styles.
Was that it? I don't know. Like I said, it was already that time, but this is the most, I think, the key pieces to that national championship.
And for all the fans out there, I did vote to put the offensive line as the MVP.
Right.
Because I think the fat guys need some credit.
Oh, most definitely. And I was going to make that point. Like I said, Will Howard wouldn't have threw for 2 touchdowns, and Jenkins wouldn't have ran for 100 yards if it wasn't for the guys up front. So most definitely, it's always the quarterback gets the awards and the offensive line gets pats on the butts and steak dinners. But nonetheless, it wins you a national championship. Quick transition. Yes, Swig.
If you like going to school here, if you remember, there used to be a school bill. Yeah, we don't have one in this one.
Well, that's what Todd said. We tried to put it in there. But no, we're going to take a quick look back at the SEC schools and break down a few report cards, how we think how the team's finished, and so forth, after I quit pressing buttons and figure out what I'm doing. All right, so let's jump to the first 4. Final results, SEC report cards, Arkansas, Alabama, Auburn, and Florida. So let's we won't spend too much on because I think we're already at 20 minutes. Close enough, but, we'll try to keep it brief. Arkansas, you literally was just above the terrible. I mean, I guess you got a D+. I mean, where was that at? 7-5 overall, 4-3 in the conference, or 3-5 in the conference. We expected, this was Sam Pittman. I guess we expected maybe a little less from you at the beginning of the season, but you did have bright moments. I think Sam Pittman did enough to keep his job. So,
let's see.
What you got?
I was gonna say I don't have anything on that one. So I was trying to pull it up.
Okay. Well, Alabama was not your best work if a teacher was writing on your paper, but you still, I would say, B- here. Alabama did a lot of good things. They showcased Ryan Williams. Miro he played subpar to the year prior to this. So it's not your best work, but you did still have a winning season. You went to a bowl game, yet you lost the bowl game. So, next year, you're not repeating the same grade, but you are.
You gave them a B+?
B-. I'm just, could have been worse.
They got a C- if I was grading them.
Well, and I would think Alabama fans are a little more critical, because I am with Auburn or your team. I know you're going to be more critical to them because you watch every game, almost every step, and that kind of thing. But let's jump down to Auburn real quick, and we all know that they're having a parent-teacher meeting after these report cards. You get an F, maybe an F+. I mean, Peyton Thorne, his numbers, I mean, yes, at the end of the season, they compared good to like Milrose, but it was trash. I thought we relied more on the big ball in the air than we should have. Give the ball to Jacquez. You had a really young running back core.
You had one of the best backs.
Oh, yeah, most definitely in the country. I don't know if Alshon Gentry numbers, but most definitely in the SEC. But things are changing.
As he said, Peyton Thorne, I hate to be this way, but Peyton Thorne was a thorn in Auburn's side.
He really was. But like I said, we've got a lot coming. Rooting class is good, so that's beside the point. That's future. So now the Florida Gators, and if you're watching and looking at these graphics, no, it's team-based just because I think there's Tim Tebow, and I'm trying to think. I think that's Will Herring for Auburn. That is Malachi. on there. But Florida, keep working hard. We predicted you to be probably the worst in the SEC, but you rounded off with a C+. I had my numbers here. Florida, 4-4 in the conference, 8-5, which was way better than we projected at the beginning of the season. You fought through. You won some crucial games. You did what you were supposed to do. Again, I think that Napier will be back in Florida. A lot of
Crazy
things.
if they don't bring him back.
No, and that's, as me and Todd talked about in the first early shows, that him and Pittman were the first two out of the SEC, but they proved us wrong, which is a good thing because, I like SEC doing good. Why does that keep dying on me? So, nonetheless, we can almost fill out an alphabet with, we got B's, D's, F's, and C's. We ain't got no A's yet, but I think there ain't too many of them because I do not think SEC was top conference this year. And like a lot of other people have Big 12, yes, because they won the national title, this, that, and other. But I think you and I have talked about it. As far as it goes, is we suffered so much loss from the transfer portal, cannibalizing each other and stuff like that. I think we struggled to keep teams alive that, especially like this Alabama team that was, poised. Texas team, they did lost a lot and they were better, but I don't think SEC was up to par as we have been in years past.
I think it was a little watered down.
Yeah, that's exactly. So let's jump to our next one. We got Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, and Ole Miss. Georgia, solid effort. You finished second in the conference, 6-2. Conference play 11-3. Probably possibly could have been in that national championship due to Carson Beck's injuries, Gunnar Stockton.
And ETN was banged up.
Yeah.
He was playing, but he was banged up. He wasn't 100%.
So you're going to get the A- here. You just didn't do enough and as far as getting to that championship, but you can't help injuries. Injuries is one thing that kills teams, whether it's basketball, baseball, or anything like that. So Kirby Smart's going to lock and reload.
Best team, I would say, at next man up.
Oh, most definitely, yeah.
And I'm talking out of the nation this year. Best team for next man up. It was kind of like if you go back to those, and I'm not trying to be long-winded here, I'm sorry, but it's like going back to those former years of Alabama with Nick Saban.
That was always next man up.
You had 2 or 3 strings that was just as good as your first string, and I think that Kirby Smart's in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. So like was saying that a lot of Nick Saban's second and third string were pretty much starters on the lower division school. But anyway, let's jump to, I believe it's probably is it not? What?
I've got the same thing up right here.
So you were
not the worst team.
It's not the worst, but you definitely get a F-. 1-7 in the conference, 4-8. You had 1 or 2 good key wins. I think recruiting is going to have to be, but I think this is Mark Stoops at Kentucky. You're going to have to work. You're going to repeat the same grade. It is what it is, Kentucky fans. I don't say this was an average year for you being this bad. Usually you do pick up a few more wins, and most of these wins were out-of-conference wins.
The biggest thing that I've seen with Kentucky is they competed with the best teams in the conference, but the problem was they could not finish the game.
Yeah.
And that is a huge failure. Like it's like they were complacent with what they were doing the whole game and didn't, venture out to try anything. And so that's a big problem. You're going to have to get recruitment. You're going to have to get players, but you're also going to have to continue to play better and not get complacent when you're winning the game.
Yeah, and most definitely. And I think they had a lot of quarterback issues. Vandergriff. Yeah, with Vandergriff and his in and out of it. But nonetheless, again, you failed this year, so try it again. And now we jump to one of the better teams, I think, that where they finished.
They finished right under Alabama, which is about halfway of the, I think, 8.
So they finished 7th. We're going to that needs improvement. Yes, you had some wins. Quarterback Nussmeier. He was like playing Russian roulette. Either you was going to get a solid effort from him, or you was going to get a dud. But I think you're going to get a C plus here. I liked the fact that you played well, 5-3 in conference, 9-4 out of conference. What is that one? And you played 6-1 at home, so you really did fine in Death Valley, and you ended the season with a 3-game winning streak. Which could that be momentum for next year? I think Brian Kelly's got his work cut out. LSU can always recruit good, being in that atmosphere. So I think they'll be fine next year. I don't know if they'll jump into the Georgia, Tennessee, Texas type atmosphere, but there's a good chance.
If they will continue to have that relationship, Nussmeier and Kelly, if they'll continue to have the relationship that they had at the end of the season, then potentially, I think that Nussmeier was a freshman, if I'm not mistaken, or a sophomore. I think he's got 1 or 2 more seasons. If he's got 2 more seasons, you'll see them.
Flourish. Well, so now I don't say this was a disappointing team. I thought this was one of my favorite teams to watch, but they finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They finished 5th in the conference. The Ole Miss Rebels, nice work. I loved watching Jackson Dart play because, one game he can throw for 300. The next game he's throwing for 500. 5-3 in the conference, 10-3 overall. I think they were one of the teams that missed out on the playoffs.
I think they're a team that could have went deep in the playoffs.
I do think so as well. B plus here. I like what they did this year. Just not enough at the end of the season to make that. Like I said, the bubble teams, like there was South Carolina that was a bubble team, Alabama, SMU. If you want to, no, SMU got in.
Yeah, they did.
And they got spanked.
They got in over Alabama.
Yeah, and they got highly spanked. That's beside the point. All right, getting to our bottom half of the SEC. Start Mississippi State.
So Mississippi State, what are you doing? I mean, Mississippi State. If you think of Mississippi State, you think of his name just left my mind, but he was one of the coolest coaches ever to be out there. He died of a heart attack. I don't know if you remember him.
Sylvester Cruz?
No. But anyway,
no, you're talking about Mike Leach.
Yeah, Mike Leach.
Oh, yeah.
You think of Mike Leach, one of the greatest air raid offenses out there.
Yeah, most definitely.
And then, we're year 3 or 4, maybe 5 of him being gone, in 2-10. What happened to Mississippi State being one of the better teams in the conference?
One of my buddies, Steve, he's from there. I think he just moved back, and he said, the atmosphere once Leach passed away and all that, it hasn't been the same. They haven't figured out. Is that who's down there? Levo? Is it Mike Levo or something? But no, you won 0. Not 1, not 2, not 1 conference game. And you lost every game on the road. Your losing streak was at 3. So we already know you're getting an F plus. If we can give you G's and E's and stuff, you would probably get one of them. And I think with this, it's going to take more than 1 year to improve this Mississippi State team.
I think you need a new coach.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. I think you need a new coach. Start Mississippi State. Anybody on the board that sees this, start with finding a coach, and then the players may come.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've got the state. It's a nice college. It's, they've got the stuff to do it. It's just going to be hard to recruit unless they get somebody in there. I think that's been the overrated team, but finished strong. The Missouri Tigers, they finished 4th in the conference. 5-3, 5-3 in the conference, 10-3. Oh, I can't read good. 10-3. We was, as anybody on the show or you listen, that Missouri was never high on our list. We thought they were subpar. I think they finished 22nd, 23rd in the final rankings. Solid work, though. We just worked. What's the quarterback? Pine's the backup. But you had Luther Burden third and other guys. Brady Cook. That you had a lot of other outside issues, I think, going. I think Burden's already went to the NFL and things like that. So take a little work. And you possibly could be a mid team next year, but you're going to have to put in the work. Oh, You come into our conference, you say you're going to run the conference and do things like your big brother Texas did. Oklahoma, you get a D minus. I mean, yeah, you were 2-6 in conference, 6-7 overall. You got into a bowl game. Did they beat Baylor?
I don't even think they beat Baylor.
No, LSU played Baylor. But beside the point,
they played Navy and they got whooped.
Okay,
they lost by 1.
You still get whooped, but nonetheless, you've got to lock and reload. Fine, go out to the portal, get you some guys. We know in Texas and all, y'all got the money. Pay somebody like everybody else is doing.
Look, I understand you beat Alabama,
big whoop,
but look here, Alabama didn't do anything either. They lost to Michigan
and Vanderbilt
and
Tennessee.
you. I mean, look at this. Just because you beat who's supposed to be the best team in the SEC does not mean you're going to run the SEC.
No, the only thing that they run was in their pants. It was.
You got to be better.
Yep, got to be better. So again, maybe next year,
or maybe 5 years.
Yeah, one of the teams we had a few high hopes for. They did struggle. We give them here. We give them, I think it's a C+. They finished mid-pack, just under LSU, 5-3 in the conference, 9-4 overall. Probably one of the best defensive play and teams that we've seen together. Deebo Samuel, I mean, they've got a lot of potential. I think they can work up to a B+ or so next year, and really have that team that can move up into possibly that top tier with Shane Beamer and Travis Williams running the offense and defense.
Look, I know y'all got them as a C+. I would have given them a B-.
Well, I'm just saying. For 6 points. Yeah,
I'm being for real. Like, they played lights out all season long and nearly knocked off Alabama, which would have definitely put them in the playoff if they could have sealed that.
Yeah, they were the one team right there with Ole Miss that was give or take a win or a loss.
Besides Ole Miss, South Carolina was my next favorite team in the SEC this year. Like, I mean, hands down. Like, if they continue doing what they're doing, everybody better watch out. Yeah, SEC, hear me out. You better watch out because South Carolina's got your number, and I think they're calling you next year.
Yeah, if they can keep it, I think Ashford just stay in maybe his senior year quarterback. Sellers was a freshman, I know for sure. So you got a few options. All right, guys. So let's jump to our last 4 teams. Probably the best. I want to say the best 4 that we've got here, but Tennessee, you finished 3rd in the conference. 6-2 in conference, 10-3 outside of conference, 7-0 at home. You defended Neyland Stadium well. A- here. I really thought that you had a chance to really do things. And who'd they get beat by? Ohio State?
It was Ohio State.
Yeah, because they drummed them.
I believe if Ohio State hadn't have locked down Sampson, Tennessee could have actually probably went deep in the playoffs as well.
Well, the biggest thing too,
you drew the hardest call on the first game.
Yeah, I do. I most definitely think that. But the thing is, you've got your now sophomore. Yeah, is that right, Junior? Your sophomore quarterback coming in. I think he learned a lot. Now, what he can transfer over to next season with Nico, you can build on that. Tennessee always recruits good, so you're in a good seat for next year.
Josh Heupel, continue doing what you're doing.
Doing what you're doing. So the top student of the SEC at 7-1 in the conference, 13-3 altogether, 7-1 at home, and with an A+ is definitely the Texas Longhorns, which is by no surprise them coming into the conference and being a powerhouse because they've always been that good. And I don't see them lacking off any with Arch stepping in and being that quarterback. Yes, he's more mobile than Ewers, but I still think you're going to have that talent coming back to be probably the 1 or 2 teams in that 25-26 season.
Well, here's the thing. You got to look at it. Texas has always been a powerhouse. It didn't matter who was out there. Texas has always been a powerhouse. You go from Colt McCoy days.
I see Ricky Williams was way back in the day. I mean, the talent pool is great down there.
It takes a great coach to coach talent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, Steve Sarkisian is that guy.
Yeah.
I think that Texas, you need to do everything in your power to hold on to Steve Sarkisian.
I think they just signed him to a big 7-year deal.
They did.
So they locked him up. So
keep doing what you're doing. I think, like Marty said, Arch Manning is probably going to put them in places that you would not expect Texas to be in the SEC within the first 2 years of being there. And I think maybe next year you see them as the 1 or 2 team
most definitely
of the nation.
Okay, we're getting close. Texas A&M, you finished 9th in the conference. You weren't, 5-3 in conference, 8-5 out of play. You take to a bowl game. We wound you up with, I think, a C-, maybe C+. More studying to it. This is Texas A&M. Not a whole lot to say. I mean, they were right at probably the middle pack of the field, but don't have too much to say about it.
They were.
They were. They played well. Great home atmosphere. You ended on a 3-game losing streak, so you really don't have too much momentum going into next year. But final team of the 16 teams here in the SEC, probably one of my favorite to watch. Most improved team, really thought you were going to finish with 2 wins at the beginning, is the Dandy Vandy Commodores, and you most definitely get a C+. Maybe could have been a B-, but wow, what a job Clark Lee done getting this program turned around. And you did finish in the bottom 5 of the SEC, but looking at it on paper, 3-5 in the conference, 7-6 overall. This 7-6 is shockingly really good for where you were going to start at the beginning of the season.
Well, you say most improved. I say most cocky. But,
Well, that's Diego Paga, and he's coming back.
He's coming back. And so here's the thing. Clark Lee has done a really good job recruiting. That's like we talked about earlier. I know it's going to be covered on another show. NIL, they brought in some of these big-name players. The only one that's really not a big name, Diego Pavia. Nobody wanted him. But what happens? He's probably one of the better quarterbacks.
He beat Alabama. He beat Auburn, which ain't saying a whole lot.
He almost beat Georgia.
Yeah, should have beat
Georgia. And I want to say they were close for a little while to nearly beating Tennessee.
Yeah, I think so. And they lost 2 of them early games because I think they started out 1-2 or something similar. That to, I think, Georgia Southern or something like that was like a walk-off or something. It was weird. But again, Vandy is most improved, and unless they just stink up an egg here in recruiting and the transfer portal, Vandy's going to be here to stay for a little bit till Pavia leaves. So really exciting. So, guys, that's pretty much our report cards for the end of the year. What a great year. No, we didn't come home with the natty for the SEC. And we did feel a little watered down, as you said. But nonetheless, this is our conference. It just means more, as they always say. So hopefully next year, with all the money going around and players staying, I think I seen Beck went to Miami. Mm-hmm. And I think with all his NIL from the school, he was getting like $9.5 million.
Yeah.
They don't even pay that in the NFL on rookie contracts. So
yeah, and I can understand why people don't want to go to the NFL and they want their extended 5th year.
Yeah, they want the 8th and 9th, 15th year.
I'll go be a kicker in the college if I could get $9.5 million.
I'll be the water boy.
Yeah. But if you had to give I'm going to throw this out there, Marty. If you had to give the SEC an overall grade,
scorecard,
it would be, I would say, C-.
Okay, I'm not too far from that. C+, C-. I could go with that.
You got to do better.
and I think
it just means more.
Yeah. But I don't think that's a bad grade as all. For overall, we had some underdog teams this year, as in Vandy, Texas A&M, South Carolina, who did better. Florida, Arkansas, that really showed more than what we thought. But then you had teams like Missouri who said they should have been in the top 5 of preseason, and yet they wind up in the bottom of the barrel. Well, we're going to jump into our logo.
Did you vote?
Yes, I did vote. So we're Oklahoma. Fans, if you're up there, this is the 4 we got for Oklahoma. We'll announce the winner Sunday and jump to, I don't remember what the next team was. That is not how it goes. Yeah, we'll find a team. We'll find another team, whichever one comes alphabetical order.
Probably. Did y'all do Ole Miss first?
No, Ole Miss will be. Yeah, Ole Miss will be next because I was trying to do it as Mississippi. But nonetheless, the 51-66 is the old Boomer Sooner. Then you turn up to the current ones, just how they do the layout, the shadowing, fairly basic. They don't get too jumped up and down about it. But fans, please go vote.
Can't run the SEC until you get a better logo.
Yeah. Be like Arkansas, have 19 logos. So again, before we get out of here, always a special thanks